The year was 1968, and it was a cold December night in Vallejo, California. David Arthur Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were high school students on their first date. They visited a mutual friend, stopped in at a local restaurant, and then at around 10:15, David pulled off in a small graveled area outside the entrance gate to the Lake Herman pumping station. This was a quiet, dark area, very popular with couples because of how secluded it was. In fact, the area was so secluded that police actually warned couples it could be dangerous. That warning would prove accurate this night. Earlier in the evening, another couple had been parked in the same spot. A car passed them, slowing as it did so. Strangely, the car then stopped in the middle of the road and began to reverse, coming towards David and Betty Lou incredibly slowly. The couple were frightened and sped off, but the car followed them. David quickly turned off at the Benicia exit, and thankfully, the other car continued on. At around 11 p.m., David and Betty Lou were still at the gravel turnout. They were then joined by a stranger in another car, who likely demanded the couple get out of theirs. David was shot in the head as he was getting out, and Betty Lou managed to flee 28 feet away before she was shot 5 times in the back. Very soon after the murder, Stella Borges, who had been on her way to pick up her son, discovered the gruesome scene. She desperately tried to find help and was lucky enough to find a patrol car near the highway. Police arrived quickly, but there was nothing to be done. Betty Lou had already died, and David was pronounced dead on arrival when he reached the hospital. Investigators combed the area for evidence, but very little was found. There were no witnesses to the crime. The frozen ground made it nearly impossible to find footprints or tire tracks. Only a few shoe prints were found in front of David's car, and a deep heel print was found near the pump house. The investigators took pictures of the area and found shell casings which showed that the murder weapon was either a .22 caliber J.C. Higgins Model 80 or a high-standard Model 101. And so the Zodiac Killer claimed his first victims. David was only 17 years old, and Betty Lou, 16. The mystery of the Zodiac Killer has terrified and fascinated people for decades. Who was this elusive murderer who seemed to taunt the public with letters and encrypted codes that claimed to reveal the secrets of their identity? Today, we're going to dive into the mystery of the Zodiac Killer. We'll find out more about their crimes, the strange letters and ciphers they kept sending to the press, and also some theories about who they might have been. Subscribe to our channel for the mysteries and stay for the stories. After the tragedy that befell David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen at Lake Herman Road, the Zodiac Killer struck again in July 1969 in the Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. Similarly, it involved a couple who parked for a romantic rendezvous, and the killer pulled up beside them in an unidentified vehicle. Michael Magot and Darlene Ferrin had their evening interrupted by a stranger in another car. The car then left, but almost immediately returned, this time parking behind them instead of next to them. The killer came around to the car that Michael and Darlene were in, armed with a 9mm Luger and a flashlight. The couple were dazzled by the flashlight and then both shot. Michael was not killed instantly, so the killer turned back to complete their gruesome mission and shot each of them again. Darlene died, but miraculously Michael survived. Michael described the attacker as being a white male with short curly hair, young, around 26 to 35 years old, weighing around 195 to 200 pounds, and 5 feet 8 inches, 1.73 meters tall. The next day, a man called the Vallejo Police Department to report the crime and also to confess to the murder that happened at Lake Herman Road. The caller did not reveal their identity to the police, and they were never able to locate him. Soon after that, the letters began arriving. On the first day of August, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner each received near-identical letters written by the Zodiac Killer. The letters provided information about the crimes that nobody else but the killer themselves would know. The killer also sent the first of their infamous ciphers, demanding it be published on the front page of the newspapers, or else they would go on a killing rampage the following Friday. The cipher was split into 3 parts, and each part was published in a different newspaper. However, not all were convinced that the letter sent was really from the killer. In the San Francisco Chronicle, Vallejo Police Chief Jackie Stiltz published a quote saying that they were not completely sure the letter and cipher were really from the killer. The Zodiac Killer responded with a letter that began, "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking," which is where the Zodiac Killer's now infamous name originally came from. In this second letter, the Zodiac Killer provided more details about the killings that the public had no way of knowing. The killer also urged the police to crack the cipher to find out his identity. Despite the Zodiac Killer's claims, cracking the first cipher did not reveal his identity. It didn't take Donald and Betty Harden very long to do, and when they uncovered the message, it read, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all the I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name, because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife. E be all right, meath pity." Nobody knows what those final 18 letters mean, but what is clear is that the Zodiac Killer got sick pleasure out of killing, believing that those he killed would become his slaves in the afterlife. Soon after these original letters were sent and the first cipher was solved, the Zodiac Killer struck again, although thankfully one of his victims would survive. On a hot afternoon at Lake Berryessa, two college students, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, were enjoying a picnic. Suddenly they were approached by a white man wearing a black executioner's type hood, the eye holes covered with sunglasses and something resembling a bib over his chest. The bib had a cross-circle symbol on it, the same one that we know today as the symbol of the Zodiac Killer. The stranger explained to the frightened college students that he was an escaped convict on his way to Mexico. He claimed to need both their money and their car because the one he'd been traveling in was too hot. The killer then forced Cecilia to tie up Brian with the plastic clothesline he brought with him. Once this was done, Cecilia and Brian were both stabbed repeatedly. Following this, the killer left, drawing the cross-circle symbol on Brian's car and writing Vallejo 12-20-68, 7-4-69, Sept 27-69, 6:30 by knife underneath. This strange message contained the dates of the two other murders committed by the Zodiac Killer, along with the date of this one. The Zodiac Killer left the scene of the crime and reported it from a payphone. The phone was found off the hook by Pat Stanley, a radio reporter, and a fingerprint was lifted from the phone but was not able to be matched to anyone. Police rushed to the scene after a man and his son, who were fishing in the area, heard Cecilia and Brian's screams for help. Cecilia unfortunately died 2 days later, but Brian lived to tell the tale. Only 2 weeks later, the Zodiac Killer murdered again, this time claiming the life of taxi driver Paul Stein. After picking up a white male passenger, Paul was shot in the head with a 9mm handgun and robbed of his wallet and keys. This event is awful enough as it is, but what makes it even worse is that a mix-up in the description of the killer meant that police likely drove right past him without realizing it. After receiving several descriptions of the killer that matched those previously reported, the police dispatcher who alerted officers to this case falsely identified the suspect as a black man. After Paul Stein's death, another letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. Chillingly, this letter contained a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt, along with shocking claims that the killer was going to then target school children. On the 20th of October 1969, the Oakland Police Department received a call from someone who claimed to be the Zodiac Killer, demanding that either F. Lee Bailey or Marvin Belly, two well-known lawyers, appear on a talk show called AM San Francisco with Jim Dunbar. Marvin appeared on the show and had a conversation with the person who phoned into the show claiming to be the Zodiac Killer. Marvin even arranged a meeting with them, but nobody came. After this so-called appearance on the talk show, another cipher from the Zodiac Killer appeared. This one remained unsolved until 2020, but we now know that it says this: "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show." Which brings up a point about me. I'm not afraid of the gas chamber, because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. Because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise death. The slaying of Paul Stine was the last of the Zodiac Killer's murders to be officially confirmed. However, the killer has been linked to other murders that show similarities to the ones he committed, such as the murder of Cherry Joe Bates, the disappearance of Donna Lass, and the murder of high school seniors Robert Domingos and his fiancée Linda Edwards. He's also been linked to the alleged abduction of Kathleen Johns, who was thankfully able to escape her captor. On March 22, 1970, Kathleen, who was pregnant at the time, had been driving along at night to visit her mother, bringing her baby daughter with her. As she was driving, Kathleen noticed that a car behind her was honking and flashing its headlights at her. Kathleen and the car behind her both pulled over. A man got out and told Kathleen that one of her rear wheels was loose, but that he could fix it for her. Kathleen agreed, but it turns out the man actually loosened the wheel instead of fixing it, so that she couldn't drive the car. The man then offered to take her and her daughter to a gas station for help. However, when Kathleen agreed, the man started driving and just kept going for around an hour and a half without stopping. He then threatened her and her baby. When the man stopped at an intersection, Kathleen was able to flee, grabbing her daughter and hiding in a field. For a short time, the man searched for her with a flashlight, assuring her that he meant no harm. When he couldn't find her, the man left, and Kathleen was able to hitchhike back to the nearest police station. At the police station, Kathleen noticed a sketch that looked very familiar to her, a sketch of the same man who had killed Paul Stine. Kathleen's car was eventually found, but it had been completely destroyed. The encounter with Kathleen was seemingly mentioned in one of the Zodiac Killer's later letters, where he wrote, "So I now have a little list, starting with that woman and her baby that I gave a rather interesting ride," ending by saying that he had burned the woman's car. The Zodiac Killer's cryptic messages continued into the 1970s. The third cipher was only a very short one. It said, "My name is," and then 13 letters of the cipher supposedly spelled out his identity. At one point, the killer sent in a letter claiming he was not responsible for a recent police station bombing, but saying he would blow up a school bus with a bomb. The letter even contained a diagram of one. This threat of a school bus bombing continued. The Zodiac Killer also seemed to want to become famous amongst the public, as in one of his letters he said he wanted to see people wearing Zodiac buttons, and in another letter said he was upset that nobody was. In that same letter, he claimed to have shot and killed another man. One of the final letters sent by the Zodiac Killer also contained a map of the San Francisco area and a cipher. Mount Diablo was marked. The killer said that cracking the cipher would reveal the location of a bomb that was set to go off. However, the cipher was never decoded and a bomb was never found. The Zodiac Killer's last letter arrived in 1974. The killer ended it with an unusual symbol that to this day nobody knows the meaning of. The letter also contained the killer's alleged final murder tally, which was said to be 37 people. For years, investigators have been hunting for the true identity of the Zodiac Killer. Despite the claims in his ciphers, so far they've brought us no closer to knowing who he really is. There have been several suspects over the years, and one of the most notable, Arthur Lee Allen, a former teacher, at one point has been convicted of child molestation. For numerous years, Allen had been interviewed and searched by police, and according to Robert Graysmith, author of the book Zodiac, many police officers considered him the killer. Despite this, Allen was never convicted of any of the killings because there was never hard evidence. Everything was just circumstantial. Some of this circumstantial evidence was the fact Allen owned a Zodiac branded watch that had the same symbol that the Zodiac Killer used on it. He lived and worked near where one of the killings took place, and he owned the same type of typewriter the Zodiac Killer once used to write a letter. His favorite story also just happened to be The Most Dangerous Game, the story about hunting humans for sport that the Zodiac Killer referenced multiple times. Then there was the fact that Alan went scuba diving at Lake Berryessa the day that the Zodiac murders took place there. And one of Alan's friends claims that Alan called himself the Zodiac privately, before there was any public knowledge of the name, and that Alan had a plan to hunt people. When Alan was in prison for child molestation, no Zodiac letters were sent. An inmate also claimed that Alan had revealed that he was the Zodiac Killer. In the 1990s, an investigator interviewed Michael Magot, one of the Zodiac Killer's surviving victims. Michael picked out Alan's photo in a lineup of potential suspects. When the police then searched Alan's home again, they found bomb paraphernalia and tapes about the Zodiac Killer. Even though the San Francisco Police Department was able to get a DNA sample from a stamp used on one of the Zodiac Killer's envelopes, this DNA did not match Alan. Also, his handwriting samples did not line up with the Zodiac Killer's handwriting either, and he doesn't look like the police sketch of the Zodiac Killer. Other notable suspects include members of the Manson family cult, all of whom were cleared. A newspaper editor named Richard Gaikowski, who has a striking resemblance to the killer even down to his voice, and Richard Marshall, a projectionist who police informants claim said he was a murderer. He was linked to the case through his love of the film The Red Phantom, which was the name used in a 1974 letter that may have been written by the Zodiac Killer. Another suspect was the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. This is because of Ted's interest in cryptography, and also because he worked in California at the time the Zodiac Killer was active. However, this theory fizzled out when it was proven that Ted's fingerprints and handwriting didn't match evidence, and also because Ted wasn't in California at the time some of the murders took place. Then there was Lawrence Kane, who was picked out by Kathleen Johns, the abduction victim previously mentioned, in a photo lineup. He was also identified by one of the officers who worked in the Paul Stine case. Lawrence had striking similarities to the killer not just in appearance but also in mannerisms. He had problems with impulse control and was at one point arrested for prowling and voyeurism. Lawrence also worked at the same hotel that Donna Lass, one of the Zodiac Killer's likely victims, worked at, and lived near where Paul Stine was murdered. Darlene Ferrin's sister also stated that Kane was the one responsible for harassing Darlene. Finally, Lawrence at one point was in the Navy and learned coding, which could have made it possible for him to write the ciphers the Zodiac Killer was sending. Some people even claimed that their family members were actually the Zodiac Killer. A retired police detective named Steve Hodel claimed that his father, George, was both the Black Dahlia Killer and also the Zodiac Killer. This was based on George's resemblance to the police sketch of the Zodiac Killer, and also the similarity of the letters between the cases. Interestingly, George Hodel was in fact a suspect in the Black Dahlia case. Then there's Jack Torrance, who was alleged by his stepson to be the Zodiac Killer because he owned a hood similar to the one that the Zodiac Killer used, although DNA evidence on this was inconclusive. And finally, Gary Stewart, in the book The Most Dangerous Animal of All, alleges that his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., was the Zodiac Killer. This was even turned into a documentary. Then there is the man who claims to have been the Zodiac Killer himself. Louis Joseph Myers, on his deathbed in 2014, allegedly confessed to his friend that he was the infamous murderer. Myers attended the same school as the Zodiac Killer's first official victims, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. He also allegedly worked with Darlene Ferrin and was overseas during 1971 to 1973 when the Zodiac Killer sent no letters. Myers supposedly went for couples after suffering a bad breakup himself. The circumstantial evidence is certainly compelling, although police have not investigated this claim because Myers' friend Randy Kenny has not yet provided any credible evidence. To this day, we still don't know who the Zodiac Killer is. His crimes continue to go unsolved, and he continues to go unpunished. Hopefully one day, we will have the answers we seek. and the killer's victims and their families can have closure. What are your thoughts about the Zodiac Killer? Do you have any theories we haven't discussed in this video? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this one. We'll see you in the next video.